When I first got up here, I told you a little story about basketball, and I told you that my dad gave me a pep talk, and I told you that basically he told me that quitting was not an option for me, which meant that whether my bones, joints, ligaments were sore or not, whether I was crying, whether I thought that the coach was crazy, I was going to play basketball. I was going to be on that basketball court, and I was going to like it. But his advice to me was, get your game up. Well, it's the same thing with our service unto God. There's no quitting on God. You can't hide from God. You can't run from God. You can try to wrestle with God, but I would not encourage that type of behavior. Y'all know your arms are too short to box with God. So reconcile in your mind today that you're going to serve God willingly and that you are going to get your game up. No matter how good you've been, no matter how many accomplishments you've already made, make up a decision in your mind today at 10:15 or so that you are going to get your game up. Because the thing about my basketball experience that I didn't share at the beginning, Minister Moore Coleman, was that when I got to high school as a freshman and made the varsity team, I knew from the beginning that there was only 4 years allotted for high school basketball. High school basketball would not last forever, and if I was going to continue to play beyond that level, that meant playing college basketball. But in order to be effective at the next level, I would have to get my game up. What am I saying? Well, I'm saying where you were yesterday, you're not today, and where you are today is not where you'll be tomorrow. The world has changed and the church has changed and people have changed, and in order for you to effectively serve in this season of your life where the pressure is on and where there's trouble on every side and where we're hard pressed on every side, where we're cast down on every side, where it appears that in many ways we're forsaken, if you're going to effectively serve in this season where the pressure is on, you cannot approach this season in the same way that you approach the last season. You will need, my brothers and my sisters, to get your game up in this next season, in this discourse. That Jesus tells the disciples the reason you were not able to do it is because this kind only can come out by prayer and fasting. And so Jesus, all those many years ago, told his disciples to get their game up. This discourse was not just about what they were experiencing right now, but it was about what they were going to be experiencing. Because the next conversation, if you keep on reading Mark, the 9th chapter, the next conversation finds Jesus reminding them that he's going to be betrayed. He finds Jesus reminding them that he is going to die. He finds Jesus reminding them that he's going to get back up again. But it finds Jesus reminding them that their day is going to come when he is going to have to depart from them. The day would come when he will not be there to rescue them for like he did on this day, and they would have to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. But in order for them to do what he needed for them to do in his absence, they needed to get their game up. Come on, Cathedral, it's time for us to get our game up. And here, the situation was right in front of them. The father brings his boy to the ones who represent Jesus, hoping that they have some degree of power based on their association, but they couldn't do it. Why? Because although their season had changed, their preparation and conduct had not. In this season, they were no longer spectators. In this season, they were no longer onlookers. In this season, they would no longer be trusty apprentices like when they watched Jesus cast out that first unclean spirit over in Capernaum, or like when they watched Jesus heal Peter's mother-in-law. In this next season, they would no longer be spectators like when the many were healed after the Sabbath at sunset. They were no longer spectators like when they watched those 4 guys lower their friend down through the roof so that Jesus could heal his paralyzed body. Oh no, but now they were on the brink of another season. It was a season that Jesus refers to over in Mark, the 2nd chapter, when he's asked why the disciples of John the Baptist and why the Pharisees fast, but his disciples did not fast. And Jesus' response was, it's not their time to engage at that level of warfare yet. Because how can the friends of the bridegroom fast while the bridegroom is still here? But then Jesus says the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and they will fast in those days. But wake up, disciples. It's time to get your game up, because those days are now upon you. And this kind that you'll face in this season, this kind that will come and roll up in your presence on this season, are the kind that can only come out by fasting and by praying. So disciples, get your game up. And this morning I want to encourage you, Cathedral International, my brothers and my sisters, young and seasoned, let's get our game up. You are on the brink of a new season in your service unto God. There is so much that God desires to do in and through and around you, but you have to get your game up. How do I get my game up? Well, you fast. You pray, you discipline your body, you discipline your mouth, you discipline your surroundings, and discipline your emotions, and discipline your impulses, and practice. Practice Jesus' model for dealing with situations, which would be identify a problem, inquire about the problem, inform the people of the necessary information that they know to do their part toward the solution, and then you decide whether or not you're going to intervene. How do you know if you should intervene? You wait until God says move. And if God does not say move, if God says keep your hand off of it, if God says keep your mouth off of it, in this next season, don't you dare touch anything that God does not want you to touch. In this new season, we got to get our game up. We get our game up by no longer being comfortable with part-time holiness. We get our game up by no longer being a part of being comfortable with stealing and robbing from God. It's the finish strong challenge. If there's anything that you do, please pay your tithes, because the Bible is right. The Bible is right concerning the tithe, that God will open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that you will not have room enough to receive. It's a biblical principle, and a principle in God you can take to the bank. But if you decide to rob God in the tithe and in the offering, then the reverse will also have to be true. Then will I not close up the windows of heaven and dry up every blessing that has been poured out to you? Get your game up in the area of tithes and offering. Get your game up in the area of prayer. Pray once a week with the rest of us. Pray every day without ceasing on your own time. Then once a week, get your game up in your church attendance. Enter the courts with thanksgiving. Enter into his gates with praise. Get in the house of God every week. You don't want to miss what God is doing. And in this season, if you're going to get your game up, you need some good coaching. You need some good teammates that will push you along the way. You need a 6'1" sister to throw your legs back toward the ground. You need somebody standing with a stopwatch to say, girl, you better get them crunches in. Time is wearing out. You better run a little harder. Run a little faster. Ain't no such thing as pacing yourself in this last leg. Girl, if you're slowing down, boy, if you're slowing down, I'll run alongside of you and encourage you. So get your game up in the area of church attendance. Get your game up. Change your surroundings. Get with some people who are working on their game too. And then every now and then, go to lunch. Schedule a meeting with somebody who has more game than you do. Get with somebody who has better skills than you do. Get with somebody that knows a little more than you do, so that they can help you to get The God that loves us is a God that will correct us when we are wrong. Who would not serve a God like this? And so we get our game up. And when the devil does not flee, when we tell him to flee, we say, please take me to the King. I don't have much to bring, but I know that in the presence of the King, it's just the power that I need. I know that in the presence of the King is the fresh wind that I need just to get my game up. We get our game up by celebrating the goodness of God in our life. Not just the goodness we've already seen, but the goodness that we anticipate. Because the Bible says, I declare that you would prosper and be in health, even as your soul does prosper. The Bible says, I have a plan for you, and that plan is good. That plan is for you to meet an expected end. So get your game up, Cathedral. Celebrate the goodness of the Lord Jesus Christ. Get your game up, Cathedral, and tell God thank you in advance for every plan. Tell God thank you in advance that those plans are good and for you to prosper, for your soul to prosper, for your family to prosper. Get your game up, because by virtue of the fact, here we go, because by virtue of the fact that you're here today, by virtue of the fact, Rhonda, you know nothing happens by coincidence. You didn't bring yourself in here today to hear a word about getting your game up. And so get your game up, because by virtue of the fact that you up in 277 Madison Avenue today, it means that God wants to use you to transform the space that you're in. But baby, you gotta get your game up. Is there anybody in the room this morning that will say, as of today, I'm working on my game? As of today, I'm working on my game. As of today, I'm gonna fast a little more often. As of today, I'm gonna pray a little harder. As of today, I'm gonna serve a little greater. As of today, I'm going to get my game up, so that when the sick, when the broken, when the bruised, when the possessed, and the hurting, anybody in the room ever encountered the sick? Anybody in the room ever encountered the hurting? Anybody in the room ever encountered the broken? When that happens again, you'll have enough godly game. I don't mean play game, but you'll have enough godly game to speak healing and see it happen. You are not in this world just to be in this world. You're in this world to get your game up so that you can change this world. Is there anybody